welcome to our 7 Days Report Show. I'm your host, Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsiloyanis. Here, we bring you all the news from around the world through all major media outlets. We bring you all the news that matters most. We delve into real news affecting our society, politics, economy, culture, and education. Let's get started with our first news. Colombians head to a high-stakes runoff on June 21 after Sunday's presidential vote produced no outright winner, setting a dramatic face-off between two ideologically opposed figures. Right-wing candidate Abelardo Della Espriella, a vocal admirer of former U.S. President Donald Trump, finished first in the first round, narrowly outpacing left-wing Senator Iván Cepeda. Cepeda, a close ally of outgoing President Gustavo Petro, came in second, securing him a spot in the decisive runoff. Both men represent sharply different visions for Colombia's future. De la Espriella has campaigned on tough crime, fighting, market-friendly policies, and a promise to roll back elements of Petro's agenda, while Cepeda has positioned himself as the defender of progressive reforms and social justice initiatives advanced by the current administration. Turnout was strong in major cities and rural areas alike, reflecting deep voter engagement after a campaign marked by heated debates over security, the economy, and peace implementation. Analysts say the runoff is likely to polarize voters further, forcing the two camps to broaden their appeals to centrist and undecided voters over the next 3 weeks. International attention has sharpened as Colombia, a regional heavyweight, moves toward a choice that could reshape its domestic and foreign policies. Markets reacted cautiously to the result, with investors watching for signals on economic management and continuity of the Petro-era reforms. Human rights groups and peace advocates urged both candidates to commit to protecting gains from Colombia's peace process. With just under 3 weeks until the June 21 runoff, political parties and civic groups are mobilizing efforts to sway voters. Observers anticipate intense campaigning and a flood of endorsements as the contenders vie to build coalitions that can win a majority in a deeply divided electorate. Moscow launched a lethal barrage on Ukraine early Tuesday, striking the capital Kyiv and the central city of Dnipro in a broad-ranging offensive that Ukrainian officials called one of the deadliest attacks in months. The overnight assault left at least 23 people dead and more than 100 wounded, authorities said. Ukrainian emergency services reported 7 fatalities in Kyiv and 16 in Dnipro. Among the dead were 2 children and Maj, Anton Yarmolenko, a deputy fire chief who was on call when the strikes hit. Hospitals in both cities worked through the night, treating dozens of wounded, with officials warning that casualty figures could rise as rescue teams continue searching damaged sites. The strikes damaged residential buildings, critical infrastructure, and emergency service facilities, according to local officials and footage shared by authorities. In Dnipro, which has previously been targeted by missile and drone strikes because of its industrial and logistical importance, several apartment blocks sustained heavy damage. Kyiv emergency responders described a fast-moving rescue operation amid blacked-out streets and sustained alarm sirens. Ukrainian leaders condemned the attacks as deliberate assaults on civilian areas and called for increased international support, including additional air defense systems. Western governments expressed outrage and reiterated commitments to providing Ukraine with military and humanitarian assistance while urging de-escalation. Russia's defense ministry did not immediately comment in detail on the specific strikes. The barrage comes amid continued tensions and periodic escalations across multiple fronts, complicating diplomatic efforts to reduce violence. Humanitarian agencies warned of mounting civilian suffering and called for safe corridors to reach affected neighborhoods. As Kyiv and Dnipro assess the damage and mourn the dead, authorities vowed to continue rescue, medical, and reconstruction efforts in the days ahead. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Wednesday that talks with Denmark and Greenland about using the island for collective defense are in a good place, comments that underscore growing strategic interest in the Five Islands Arctic amid rising global competition. Rubio made the remarks during a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing, where members pressed him on diplomatic engagement with European partners and the implications of heightened great power activity in the region. Lawmakers highlighted Greenland's location and resources as factors fueling international attention, particularly from the United States and China. The exchange drew attention after Representative Sarah McBride of Delaware questioned Rubio's awareness of Greenland's political status. "I assume you're aware that Greenland is indeed part of Denmark?" McBride asked. Rubio replied, "For now." The terse response prompted follow-up questions from committee members seeking clarification on whether Rubio's comment reflected a specific policy consideration or was a verbal misstep. State Department officials later described Rubio's "in a good place" assessment as reflective of ongoing diplomatic discussions aimed at enhancing collective defense options and infrastructure cooperation, not an immediate policy shift. U.S. interest in Greenland has increased in recent years because of the island's strategic location, position between North America and Europe, and its proximity to Arctic sea routes and natural resources. Denmark and Greenland have historically managed defense and foreign policy through Copenhagen, though Greenland has expanded its autonomy, especially over domestic affairs and resource management. Any formal change to Greenland's governance or sovereignty would involve complex negotiations and legal processes involving Greenlandic authorities, the Danish government, and international partners. Analysts said the hearing highlighted the balancing act for U.S. officials, strengthening Arctic security partnerships while respecting sovereignty, norms, and careful diplomacy with allies. Lawmakers signaled they would continue oversight as discussions with Copenhagen and Nuuk proceed. Authorities in India launched a citywide fire safety inspection campaign Thursday after a blaze at a New Delhi hotel that killed 21 people, officials said. The owner of the establishment was arrested hours after the fire, as investigators sought to determine whether safety lapses or regulatory violations contributed to the high toll. The fire erupted late Wednesday at the multi-story hotel in a busy commercial district. Emergency crews battled heavy smoke and flames, pulling dozens of guests and staff from upper floors. Officials said 21 people were confirmed dead and several others were hospitalized with burns and smoke inhalation. Firefighters worked through the night to fully extinguish hotspots and secure the building. Police arrested the hotel's owner on charges including culpable homicide and breach of safety regulations, a senior city official said. Authorities alleged the property lacked adequate exits, functioning alarms, and other mandated firefighting equipment. Forensic teams are examining structural and electrical causes. The arrested owner will be produced before a magistrate as investigators expand their probe. Delhi's municipal corporation ordered immediate inspections of hotels, guest houses, and other lodging facilities across the capital. Inspectors will verify fire exits, emergency lighting, alarm systems, sprinkler systems where required, and staff training records. Violators face fines, temporary closure, or criminal prosecution, officials warned. The crackdown aims to prevent repeat tragedies in a city where rapid urban growth has strained enforcement of building and safety codes. Relatives and residents staged small protests outside the damaged hotel, demanding accountability and compensation. Local ministers expressed condolences and pledged swift action to strengthen enforcement and public awareness. The National Disaster Response Force and local agencies will support inspections and emergency response upgrades, officials said, while the investigation into the exact cause of the deadly blaze continues. The Iran-backed Hezbollah militia rejected a proposed ceasefire in Lebanon, while Israel said it would not withdraw its troops from the country, a dual development that complicates President Donald Trump's bid to halt fighting and pursue a broader peace accord with Tehran. Hezbollah's dismissal came after international calls for a de-escalation following renewed clashes along the Israel-Lebanon frontier. The group signaled that Palestinian and Lebanese grievances, as well as ongoing Israeli strikes, make a truce unacceptable unless substantive guarantees are offered. Hezbollah's leadership has repeatedly portrayed its operations as defensive measures against what it describes as Israeli aggression. Israel, meanwhile, affirmed its decision to keep forces in place, arguing that withdrawals would create a vacuum exploited by militant groups. Israeli officials said maintaining troop presence is necessary to protect northern communities and deter cross-border attacks. The stance drew immediate rebukes from Lebanese officials and humanitarians who warned that sustained military activity risks wider destabilization. The impasse undermines Washington's delicate diplomacy. Iran has made a ceasefire in Lebanon a precondition for any U.S.-Iran deal and has publicly hinted it could intervene more directly if Israeli strikes continue. That threat raises the prospect of a broader regional confrontation, a scenario U.S. negotiators are attempting to avoid while seeking concessions from Tehran on its regional activities and nuclear program. International actors urged restraint. The United Nations called for renewed dialogue and expressed concern over civilian casualties and displacement near the border. As diplomatic efforts intensify, analysts say the next 48 to 72 hours could determine whether the confrontation remains localized or escalates into a wider crisis, drawing in regional powers. That was the 7 Days Report Show. I'm your host, Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsiloyanis. Before signing off, I would like to thank you for listening to our news. Until next time, stay informed and be safe. Goodbye.